Hi, Mike.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Um, Today we're doing something a little bit different. So, welcome to the Learning to Escape podcast, everyone out there viewing. Um, Today is definitely a learning experience, hopefully for us, because we had a weird circumstance happen, and well, really the outcome, not so much the circumstance, but the outcome. And it's kind of mind boggling. So we're hoping that maybe some viewers out there can give some advice and not necessarily nasty comments, but advice we'd love. As far as it goes, we were working a job where we were doing some reseeding, um, grading. It's like a big cleanup. And a person came up and approached Jen and asked if we could help with a sinkhole. And Jen, being awesome as she is, she broke away and went over and checked out the sinkhole. And actually, Jen, I'll let you describe that circumstance, what it was like.
hmm Yeah. So she approached us, just kind of walking up. There is a adjacent road to the road that we are working on. And she approached me and said that she had a drainage concern, in her yard. And she wanted to know if we would be able to assist. So I walked over to her residence with her, and she showed me the area, which appeared to be, ground that was sunk down. It looked like a sinkhole, but it looked like it was more than met the eye. Like you couldn't tell necessarily how deep it went and what was in the hole because there were branches and twigs and just debris that was there collected into the hole. And she proceeded to explain to me that whenever it rained, that water, rushed into her yard and it was exacerbating the sinkhole. And she was looking for a solution. So that's kind of where I clued you in. And we kind of went from there.
Perfect, perfect. And yep, you came back, told me all about it, and had some awesome pictures. And around here, of course, in Georgia, we have sinkholes for all different reasons. Some are from construction when a house is built back, in the 70s and 80s around here. A lot of times they would throw the extra pieces into low areas and just fill it. And until, years later that some of that stuff collapsed and then, lo and behold, there's a sinkhole. Another are tree roots. I mean, of course, there's other reasons, but that's, the majority of the sinkholes we come across. Tree roots, of course, they can stay there for quite a while after a tree's taken out. And then as they, you know, decompose, whatever, then the level of the ground falls in and you've got a big sinkhole. And people try and just throw dirt in it, a lot of times soil, things like that, and it doesn't really fix it. What you've got to do is, put down something with some weight, some rocks. If you are using dirt, a fill dirt that has, rocks and things like that in it first. And then you can always put soil and things like that on top. And that's why it wasn't as simple as, well, you got a hole. Okay, we'll come fill it. We went, checked it out. And when I got there, what I could see is, yes, there's, definitely the neighbors to, if you're looking at the house, the neighbors to the right are, higher than theirs. It slopes down into her backyard. And then her neighbors, if you're looking at her house to the left, are, a little bit lower than her. So where her fence cuts off, that property comes down a bit. So her ground is still a little bit higher than her other neighbors, but not so much as a slant like her other neighbors are. So you could see that when the water comes down, and there's also a gutter that has a drain. It's like a French drain pipe, but it doesn't go to a French drain. It's just a pipe that comes out and goes into the yard. So, of course, the homeowner was thinking, well, it's just, the rain has caused this sinkhole. But I pointed out that you can see tree roots down. So what the plan was, I looked at everything. I came back and then we put, the estimate together. And the plan of action was to make the sinkhole larger first. Go ahead and cave in all the ground that's around it. So that way, once we, fill it, it doesn't all of a sudden, sink again or get wider in places that we didn't fill up. And so, when I explained that to her, she totally understood and made sense. And then we, of course, talked about, the water that's coming off the drain, the downspout, that it needs connected, or at least, come to where we have a French drain catch. And that way the catch will catch that rain that's coming off the gutter and then go down the French drain that's going to go to the end of her yard. And being there's a fence, we can't really, go under it. So we did a pop-up emitter to where that way the water will just spread evenly down there at the end. So she loved the idea. It's great. So we got it on the schedule, gave her the estimate. She approved the estimate, no problem. And then when we came to do the job, I came, the first day, and the main thing I was going back over, and she did point out a few things. She asked if, where the pop-up emitter was going to go, if I could blow out some of those leaves and stuff and mulch them up, and no problem. But then she'd asked about this whole area behind the yard where it's like poison ivy and a bunch of like privets and things like that. Asked if we could, cut it all down and cut it back, and there's some tree limbs and some extra stuff like that. And I said, well, talk to Jen, and she's like, I don't mind paying more. I just want, if it's going to have a nice yard, I want it all to look great. It's like, no problem. If it's just going to be a few limbs and just, some little things like that, that's no problem. We can do that. And so, and she was aware that, the estimate is estimate, but there'll be, a little bit more added on. But anyway, do the cleanup part, the first part of it, the leaves, the mulching, all that stuff, everything in the yard, getting it prepped to where then we started, really with a pickaxe and things like that. I started just smashing in all around the hole. And we found where it did make little tunnels from where the roots were. And it ended up being, quite a large hole that we were able to, cave in, but then nothing else around it would cave in. Like it was solid ground. So then I felt great about it and got actually gravel put in, really weighed it down, put some fill dirt. But again, first with the gravel was, below the drain. And then once we put down the drain, instead of just doing a simple catch that we were doing, I went ahead and put in a channel drain. So it'd be nice and wide to catch a large volume of water. It also was connected to the drain pipe that was coming off of her roof, off her gutters. And so all that water then would go, and it was about 30 feet that it went down the tube, the French drain tube, to the pop-up emitter. And again, in gravel, covered with gravel, and then fill dirt on top, and then screen top dirt, and a sod dressing, which, has a mixture of sand, has some fertilizer, things like that, to be able to put new seed down. And we went with a, fast seed, a contractor's mix, which has got, rye and things like that mixed with fescue, because fescue is what would do best back there. But we wanted something that was immediate. And she wanted something like the lawn that we were doing that she came to us on. And so she loved it. We took pictures of everything all the way through, of course, like, we always try to do, and not really for the sake of thinking we do anything wrong, because we always make sure to try and live by our reputation. Gather, business from our reputation, do things right. Not saying we're perfect. We mess up on some stuff, and, but we always would make it right. Always keep it honest and transparent. And so, everything was great. She even came out. This was a 2-day job. And the second day, I had a helper with me because we had so many loads of gravel and dirt. And then, the soils and things like that, this took a long time. But again, we're making sure it was thorough and it was going to actually fix the problem, not just put a Band-Aid on it. And so she even writes to Jen saying, she loves it, did a great job. She's very happy. And we have all this, our text writing, everything. So we're figuring everything's fine. Well, on that second day, as she's writing you saying everything's great, she's also coming out and she's asking me and Joshua if we will take a basketball goal that's back there that we had been moving around out of the way. And we already had all of the tree limbs and all of the shrub stuff that we had cut out of there loaded into the trucks and had it into a dumpster back at our office. And we didn't have room for any more stuff. So I told her, I said, well, look, we're kind of at the max of what we can be taken right now. but we can do another job for you next week. We can just get you an estimate over. And then she's like, oh, well, yeah, then I'd also like to get some of these hedges back here cut, and started naming off other stuff. And we're like, great, we get you another estimate, get another job. It's like, okay, cool. Happy as can be. Everything's great. So laid down the wheat straw on top
Mm-hmm.
of the seed. We're done. We take everything, we go. And then you send the invoice. Now she asked, because the invoice, we'd already given her a 10%, was it 10 or 20% coupon?
20%.
20%.
It was
Okay, yeah.
about
20,
$863 off, I believe, something like that.
right. And, you know, she asked, though, why all of a sudden there was $300 more than the original estimate. And you had explained to us for the extra stuff that she'd asked us to do, which was those
Mhm.
tree limbs that were coming over the grass, and some other small bushes, privets, and a bunch of poison ivy and stuff like that. And then she's like, okay. She said she would have a check for us tomorrow. And again, this is all in text, and there was never a language barrier or anything. It's just it was easier going back and forth with text. That's how she wrote, and so that's how we
Mhm.
responded. um, but we did talk to her there.
I was going to say, I do think it's relevant to say that, she was contesting the processing fees in addition to the additional amount for the extra work, and said that she wouldn't pay a penny more than 2,900. So we discounted the bill again on top of the 20% so that it would go down to the 2,900 that she said she would pay. So she got additional money off.
That's right, because she said she wanted to see the grass grow first, which is kind of silly
Yes.
when you're planting grass and you expect it to immediately grow. And you also have the neighbor's grass that is a perfect example, because we had just done that job. Now we're looking like 2 weeks or so that it's been, and it looks beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember she had wrote on the text saying, and this is still like, this is the next day when she was supposed to have the check, and said that her son would have it to come by and get it. And so, we're the next morning, we were going to go get it. And then she writes, she didn't leave it with her son because she drove by the other house and the grass isn't growing in well, which is silly, but we're like, okay. And we're trying to, understand it. But then it's when things started to sound fishy. And,
Mm-hmm.
at this point, hey, we just want to get finished with the job. But then she's also asking when I'm coming back to, and I'm guessing to do this other work that we talked about, but she hadn't had an estimate yet. But at this point, things were seeming kind of funny, and we were having a hard time just getting paid for the job we already did. Because keep in mind, there's a lot of materials that comes with that, not just the labor. But
Mm-hmm.
she said that she didn't, leave the check with him to come at 4:30 because she wanted to talk to us. And so we came at 4:30, and we came actually, we were coming back from another job, so it was you, myself, and Joshua who had worked that job with me on the second day. And
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat, it was strange. She comes out as we pull up. We never even had to knock on the door. She's got the Ring camera. She sees us, and she comes out, and then she's asking about the grass, and she's saying again that she doesn't. It was two things. She said she wanted more things cut in the back on that back hill. That still was never part of the original job. That was the add-on job, which we've already pretty much deducted again because she's saying that she wants to wait until the seed grows in. So what she does is she
Mm-hmm.
gives us a check that is $300 less than what it even is supposed to be after all the discounts, saying that I will pay you the rest when the grass grows. And this, I didn't even know at the time, but Josh was recording because he thought things were fishy anyway. But she said, here's the check, and then I'll pay you the other three once the grass grows. I'm like, okay, perfect. Fine. We just, again, want to pay, move on. And then, everything works out. Then, maybe we'll do the other job, send her an estimate. But we know, moving forward, something just didn't feel right. Well, anyway, another night goes by, and then Saturday, We get, a rainstorm, and I mean, it's crazy rainstorm. And she
Mhm.
sends a video of the rain, coming down her backyard. I mean, it's a river of water coming down her yard, which would have happened, no matter what. But she's saying that, it's not all catching in the drain. And we said, okay, no problem. We'll come out there and see what it is, because no matter what, your work has a warranty. So,
Mhm.
we'll make it right. Last thing we're going to do is ruin our reputation over, some simple job like this. Of course, we'll make it right. And that's, again, why,
Mhm.
you can see on everything that we have, and why she probably came and got us, because she sees that we do good work. And just like she'd text you, hey, did really good work. So
Mhm.
we told her, no problem. Well, that next day was Sunday. And of course, we were with families. And she's asking, when are we coming by? Are we coming by? And we said, on Monday, we come by, no problem. And we had actually wrote her too that we would let her know, when we're on our way. And Monday, you were already getting text, when am I coming by? And then you'd wrote her back, all right, well, we're 5 minutes out. Or I think you wrote her first and said, we'll let you know when we're 5 minutes
Mhm.
out. And then when
Mhm.
we were 5 minutes out, you wrote her that we were 5 minutes out. And we get there, and, we get out and we park, just like we do right in front of the ring camera. And we walk around to where the drain is. She doesn't come out. And we see that, where the channel drain is, where the water came down, to the right of where the channel, like if you're looking at the channel drain, so it'd be to the left, I guess, away from the house. The water coming down is still coming down heavy a little bit further, about maybe a foot or so past the drain, where you can see that it's still washing away some. You can see where it could get worse. And so what I said is, well, what I'll do is just connect, because these channel drains, connect, and you can make them as wide as you want to. So what, said to you, said, on writing to her saying, no problem. We know exactly what to do. We'll just add a little extra to the drain, no charge, and then drain hook the pipe there. And it's not a
Mhm.
hard fix. Everything else is there. Of course, we'll do, more seed again. And again,
Mhm.
everything's 100% covered. No worries. The response you get is a what with a question mark. And then I
Mhm.
told you not to bring anything, which was weird. It didn't make sense. We didn't bring
Mhm.
anything. I don't know what we really would have brought, because we were coming to look at it to see, what was going on after the storm. And she says, after that, um, don't deposit the check. Well, of course, we deposited a check when we got it. The job was on Thursday. We got the check on Friday, deposited the check on Friday.
Mhm.
Then now on Monday or Tuesday, she
Yeah,
canceled it.
I think it was, mhm.
Yeah, she canceled the check.
Mhm.
And of course, that makes no sense, because, I mean, if I go and, a plumber comes and fixes something, and then I pay him, and then something else happens, well, I don't just call and stop payment for a job that was already done, days ago. I would call and say, hey, we've got a problem again. Can you come look at it? And,
Mhm. Come fix it.
any warranty it. If not, worst case scenario, you
Mhm.
sue them or something, you go after them. But stopping payment, I don't see how that's not a dishonest, like that's not stealing. It seems, I mean, it's like if you go and get, a haircut, don't like it, and then stop payment afterwards. It doesn't really work like that. The cops will still come and be like, hey, you're stealing. So we, of course, make a police report. And it turns out that where she lives is right on the county line. So she is in a different county than we live. And so the
Mhm.
first officer that went out there was kind of, I guess, surprised, kind of like, hey, this isn't really my jurisdiction. But he still did a report. But then we had to have another officer from that county come out there. And they did it. But still, it was weird that, when they were talking with her, one cop act like he already knew who she was or dealt with her before. It was really fishy. But then we're talking to them and talking to the investigators because at first, kind of getting the idea of like, hey, they did something dishonest, and you could kind of tell that there was like really it felt like it was kind of a scam from the get go. But we're trying to give the benefit of
Mhm.
the doubt. And again, hey, just make the check right. We'll make the job right, no problem. But then again, now she's telling us to
Mhm.
take everything and she will hire somebody else. And the thing is, everything that we have there is buried into the ground. It's,
Mhm. Mhm.
several tons of gravel, several tons of dirt, fill dirt, the soil, the seed, and of course the drain pipe, the emitter, all that stuff. And the last thing we're going to do is come back onto somebody's property that just told us to get off and cancel the check they
Mhm.
paid us. So we're just like, let the law's on our side, surely the law's on our side. And again, we are big supporters of the law. Back the blue, not,
Mhm.
trying to say anything against anyone here except for, I guess, one person and the customer, of course. But, we finally got our day in court and, just civil magistrate court. And she shows up with an interpreter, which was really strange because she had no problem talking to us numerous times on the phone and in person.
Mhm.
And we had a witness, of course, there that, worked the job and everything with us that is just completely surprised, like, what on earth is going on with this interpreter? And so first, the judge asked if we go and we'll do mediation. And we sit with the mediator. The mediator is trying to figure out what this interpreter is doing because every time she asks her, she answers. But then the interpreter is like giving advice, like legal advice and stuff.
Mhm.
And the lady's like, hey, no, 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 no. Do you need an interpreter or not? Well, then, they're saying, that they're not going to settle or not going to pay, anything. And the mediators even still kind of hint at, hey, this, you're paying for a service that you got. And then, they offered, and they're seeing everything in writing and pictures of everything showing that we completely did the job that we did above and beyond the job that we had, promised. And
Mhm.
we had responded to everything immediately and guaranteed that, any issues would be resolved, that everything was warranted 100%. And even asked it, well, if they came out, and fixed whatever the issue is, would that be okay? And she's like, no, no. It's like, okay, so, where's the win? Where's the resolution here? And
Mhm.
so, of course, the mediation got nowhere. They offered just a fraction, like an insulting fraction of what even the payment was for. And we're not even trying to go after extra damages and all this stuff, even though it took us a month and a half, 2 months to even get to court.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we get in there to court, and the judge, she's trying to understand again why the interpreter is there. And she's asking, do you need this
Mhm.
interpreter? And not really getting a straight answer. Um, because she is answering the judge and understanding everything. But then the interpreter again is giving her legal advice, and the judge stops right there. He's like, no, I'm not going to allow this. But still is allowing the interpreter, even though the interpreter wasn't interpreting anything. And she understood all of it. It was just the weirdest situation I'd ever been in. Not that I go to court all the time, but my gosh, Judge Judy would have had a fun time with this one or any of those shows, People's Court. But
Bring it on.
anyway, but the judge even says, when after shown all the, and this is what's weird, she's shown all the pictures, she's shown, the whole story of what went on, all the text, the timeline of everything, how soon we were out there to say, hey, you know what, we see what went on, we'll fix it.
Mhm.
But, fixing it was a simple little, hour to 2 hour thing. And it was just going to cost us some more money, in material and time, but we're totally fine with that. Didn't we express that, hey, we
Mhm.
want everything to be perfect. And, but the fact that we had to go into all the stuff on what materials we used. She said that, with all the water, that some sand had got up, on the back patio. And for one, I'm not even sure why it had to get into all that stuff, because it's still about a service that was done. She was happy with it. Even has
Oh
in writing
no.
of her being happy, her paying, then saying not going to pay, and then paying, and saying that again, she's happy and she'll pay the rest when the grass grows. But then now she's talking about sand. And then the judge asked me, why is there sand? And I explained to her, I said, well, in the top dressing, which is like a dressing for sod and seed and things like that, and especially being on an angle, you mix a little sand in there so that way it weighs it down. And of course, we had the wheat straw on top of it and everything, but all just mixes really well together, especially with the compost and things like that we had in the fertilizer. I mean, really did a nice mixture for the grass seed. But then all of a sudden that was questioned, and the judge goes, well, I don't know anything about landscaping, but sand, that just seems weird. But then she goes back again, she says, but still, and she says to the lady, she goes, you can't order and have a service done and then pay for it, be happy with it, and then change your mind afterwards that you're not happy with it, and then stop payment. That's not how it works. You would go after. So
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Can we combine the recordings?
The judge says you have to pay for your service. If you don't like it, then it's kind of like returning something, or go after warranty, something like that. You don't just stop payment on the service. So she says, I know y'all, whoever, we find at fault is going to appeal. So I need to go ahead and make, all the notes and everything in here. And then, you'll know the answer within 30 days. But of course, we figured, it's a pretty simple open and shut case that we would at least get paid for the job we did. We're not going to try to, again, seek extra damages and all this stuff. We just want the check that she wrote that was still for less than everything, still needs to be good. Well, here we go. 30 days or so later, we get a simple letter that just says judgment for the defendant, not us. No explanation. No, there's not even a partial anything to cover all of the materials. So I'm trying to understand how, and if other companies are out there, you need to know about this, because this is messed up. You go do a big job, a few $1,000 job for somebody, and then get paid for it. No wonder so many people will only take cash. But with the figure check, well, you can't go cash a business check to your business. You have to deposit it. So, you just think that, you're okay, you're covered. The law's on your side. You're doing things right. But apparently to some judges, that doesn't matter. So I'm guessing, it says, we can appeal and go in front of an appeal court. But I'm blown away, and I'm wondering if anyone could give any kind of advice out there on how this makes sense, but also if there's other options. It blows me away, and it's not right to just sit back and be like, I guess we'll just take it. We'll just lose it, Not only was it a lot of work, but it's, the whole fact of the matter of you can't just do that. You don't just buy something and then decide that you're not going to pay for it. You're going to keep it for free. And especially when it's something that you can't just give back or return. It was in your ground. It's like getting your septic pumped and then saying, no, never mind. And then the septic company coming and pouring it all back in. That would be awesome. That would be very funny. But I don't think that one would come out too well. But again, you were looking for some kind of answer or reasoning or something to see what it is that we're missing. No, that we're not crazy. That if, it doesn't make sense. It was paid for. It was done. It was even bragged about what a good job it was. And any of the issues that were about the check were resolved when she made the check less, to go ahead and say, okay, fine, I'll pay for all this that's done.
Right, and she never
And then
said
once
to
the
hold
grass
the check
grows,
or anything like that, you
nothing,
know?
nothing. And
Mhm,
she had even wrote in one of the texts too, after we said, we deposited the check because you'd never said anything about holding it. And you explained to her again about what she had said about she would pay the other 300 when the grass grows. And so there was no reason to be holding the check. But she said, don't deposit it because it will cost me a fee. So what does that trigger
mhm,
in your mind? Why would it cost you a fee if you deposited a check unless they didn't have the money to pay for it and then they get an overdraft
mhm.
fee? So
Yeah,
again, was this set up from the beginning? I mean,
mhm.
we're not saying names, but if anyone wants to, privately contact us, we're happy to talk about things in more detail. We're just not going to go out there and start, you know, getting somebody. I don't know. Yeah,
Harassed or
we're still
anything,
going to
yeah.
be the bigger people, you know, but we would love some feedback on what is it we're missing. And
Mhm,
if you are another, small business out there, hopefully it's going to make you think twice before. And I don't want to say don't trust people because we do have, for one of these bad apples, we've got a million great ones, that we can
mhm,
trust. But there is a reason people do deposits, the 50% up, up front. At
mhm.
least if we would have done the 50% up front, we would have something out of it that would be like, okay, it's not such a big slap to the face.
Right,
But when
or a
it's,
big
the
loss.
100% of the job and there's no way you can take any of the materials back, and that's what the person knows, and then it really makes you look back and be like, wow, we were kind of played throughout the whole thing when you go and look at each
Mhm,
circumstance throughout it. And
mhm,
so again, it's kind of part of learning to escape. Is always learning some kind of lesson, but don't lose faith in everybody, but just be careful. And that's for
mhm,
sure. Because you never know. Because at first, she was sweet as could be. Even offered, us, a little seat out there to sit if it got, too hot, and all the things, of course, she brought up in court. But
mm,
at the time, it was nice. We've had such a great, back and forth relationship, all to the very end. The only time it
mhm,
wasn't is when we came back to get the check, and then her complaining about other stuff that we still haven't even given her an estimate on not being done yet or coming back to do it.
mhm.
It's almost like she wanted more work done so she could pay it all with one check. That way
Right,
she could get as
right.
much out of it as she could and then stop the payment. That's what makes the most sense. Oh, what do you guys think?
Mhm.
I don't know. It's pretty
I'm
fishy,
interested to
huh?
hear the feedback.
Yeah. But I could not believe when we got that paper from the judge. And we'll just say this, it's not in Cherokee County where we live. So we can't blame
Mhm.
Cherokee County. Cherokee County was good. But the other one, it's mind boggling. But
Mhm,
we will appeal it, and hopefully we'll get some good feedback from y'all out there. And
mhm.
yeah, we'll keep you updated.
We'll go from
See
there.
how the appeals go. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for spending the time. Thank you, Jen. Any
Absolutely.
final last
Thanks for the
words?
story. No, I mean, we
Yeah, not
just
one I
would
wanted to tell.
appreciate feedback and any yeah. Well, it's life.
Yep, exactly. Cool. All right. Well, thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.